Tonight on Reporting Scotland, a Catholic bishop admits recent sexual abuse scandals have damaged the trust parishioners have in their priests.
And I know people, for instance, who trusted their children to Paul Moore years ago, and now they stand a question, what did I do? I mean, but in those days, that's what you did. You had a complete and utter trust in the priest, and that's been undermined.
Also on the programme, the troubled engineering firm BIFAB has new Canadian owners. The UK government is to challenge Holyrood's Brexit legislation in the Supreme Court. Rangers suspend club captain Lee Wallace and striker Kenny Miller following a dressing room dispute after a defeat by Celtic on Sunday. And swimming star Duncan Scott leads the homecoming athletes as they bring their medals and their memories from the Commonwealth Games. Good evening. A senior figure in the Catholic Church has admitted recent sexual abuse scandals involving clergy have damaged the trust parishioners have in their priests. The Bishop of Galloway's comments follow the jailing last week of a former priest for sexually abusing children as young as 5. Our social affairs correspondent Rival Alderson reports.
St Margaret's Cathedral in Ayr, the heart of the Galloway diocese. It's from here the bishop has sent a pastoral letter to Catholics in which he says, in the light of recent sexual abuse scandals involving clergy, the Church itself could be the greatest obstacle to its work.
The sins of the Catholic Church, the sins of people within the Church are an obstacle to faith. The negative publicity that comes from all of this, the fact that something so seriously as abuse of a child, it undermines the preaching of the gospel, and obviously it gets people to, not just existing Catholics, to question their faith, but also others to question the teaching of the Church because of that.
Father Paul Moore was a priest in the Galloway diocese. Last week he was jailed for 9 years for sexual offences against boys, including rape. Bishop Nolans urged Catholics to read the judge's sentencing statement.
In carrying out these crimes, you took advantage of your position as a minister of religion, a profession from which the public, including children, ought to be able to expect integrity, trust, support and pastoral care.
I know people, for instance, who trusted their children to Paul Moore years ago, and now they stand a question, what did I do? I mean, but in those days, that's what you did. You had a complete and utter trust in the priest, and that's been undermined.
Survivors groups have welcomed the bishop's urging of other abuse victims to come forward, but they say the pastoral letter isn't enough. Church leaders must do more.
They lack humility to actually acknowledge the role they've played in the abuse, because the vast majority of the bishops concerned, both the current ones and the previous one, have actually covered up abuse. So they are part of the problem. But there's a lack of humility. They should be coming forward and saying, look, we have failed. We have failed survivors. And we're now going to do our very best to reach out to them.
The Church says it's published new instructions to safeguard children and vulnerable adults, and says it's now much more aware of how common abuse can be. Rival Alderson reporting Scotland, Ayr.
A man is fighting for his life after he was shot in the head at a set of traffic lights in the Maryhill area of Glasgow. The victim has been named locally as 29-year-old Kenny Riley. He was the passenger in a silver BMW when the vehicle was attacked on Billsland Drive at about 10:30 last night. He's now in a critical condition in hospital. Police believe the shooting could be connected to a local feud.
There was a man who was a passenger in a silver BMW parked at the traffic lights at Billsland Drive at Maryhill Road when a black people carrier type car pulled in front. A man then alighted from the black people carrier and discharged a firearm at the male who was a passenger in the silver BMW.
The troubled engineering firm BIFAB has new Canadian owners. It's hoped the deal, which was brokered by the Scottish Government, will mean the fabrication yards in Burntisland, Methil and Stornoway will have a more optimistic future. The company has more than 250 workers. Maura Kinnerborough has this report.
Very, very bright future and very exciting.
Relief and hope at BIFAB.
Your skills, your efforts and everything that you put in is just tremendous.
A warm welcome for the new Canadian owners.
It's a massive relief, not just for myself but for the area. for all the men that work here. And I've worked here since I left school. My wife's pregnant here, and so it's just a relief for us all.
A lot of the work has went abroad, you know, and it'd be terrific if we can, you know, keep a foothold in this country, because there's a lot of wind turbines to be built.
We've got the new investor in, the new owners. Hopefully they can bring work in and we could win more contracts.
There are no guarantees for the future of this engineering firm. It has no more orders on its books. But there is great hope that a new owner brings with it a more positive future.
The way we do business and what BIFAB does here in their yards is so well aligned with our Marine Division activities in North America. So we see it as an opportunity to expand our company to this new geographic segment, and really excited about the renewables opportunities here as well. And BIFAB has established itself as a leader in that sector.
BIFAB builds parts for wind turbines. It was threatened with closure. Workers blockaded the plant. Hundreds of agency staff lost jobs.
This has been a long haul, you know, since last year. We were on the brink, took it back from the brink, and to the workforce's credit, they've stood fast here to try and protect these jobs in all of these yards. So this announcement today is fantastic.
The deal took over a year to conclude. The Scottish Government has had to step in with loans.
All of the taxpayer involvement is on fully commercial terms. That means that we expect to get a return on that, and it will see the Scottish Government become a minority equity holder in BIFAB, at least for a period.
A new lease for the Arnish yard on Lewis, with specific capabilities the Canadians want. Renewed hopes for all 3 yards, though there may yet be more redundancies if there's a gap in orders. Maura Kinniburgh reporting, Scotland 5.
Well, our business and economy editor Douglas Fraser joins me now on that subject of orders. A new owner, but no new orders yet, Douglas.
Yeah, they're currently building platforms, jackets for wind turbines to sit on. That's in the Outer Moray Firth. That's around halfway through that contract. After that, as you're hearing, nothing in the order book. The priorities are to finish that contract, and the next contracts could come from other wind farms off the coast of Angus, Moray, Fife, the coast of eastern England as well. But it will take several months until the winning contracts from the tendering processes are announced. So lots of work out there, but delays, and lots of competition also from around the North Sea. The Scottish Government may build up to 38% stake in this new company, but it can't guarantee contracts or indeed subsidies either. As for the new business, DF Barnes, it's been in marine engineering in Canada for 86 years. It's newer to steel fabrication off the coast of eastern Canada, but it's new to operating abroad, and the firm wants to use BIFAB skills to be able to export from Scotland. That would be great if it can also sequence the contracts to avoid the boom and bust, the peaks and troughs of work. But first it has to win those new contracts. So a really big, important step forward for BIFAB today, but there's still a long, quite difficult course to run.
Douglas, thank you. A battle between the UK government and its Scottish and Welsh counterparts is to go to the Supreme Court in London. It focuses on Brexit legislation and whether the devolved administrations have the legal right to pass their own bills, which they claim would ensure no powers are lost to Westminster after Britain leaves the EU. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
At the Scottish Parliament, the beehive awakens after a long winter. The honey produced here sells out in hours. It just so happens that honey production standards and food labelling are powers currently exercised by the EU. As we buzz out the European Union, powers come back. Some land in Edinburgh, some temporarily to London to establish common frameworks. But that's caused a row, with Scottish ministers saying it's a power grab. Along with the Welsh Government, they've passed continuity bills to make Brexit work the way they want. UK ministers think that's illegal and have referred it to the Supreme Court in London. In Scotland, they're confident of victory.
We believe that the bill is perfectly within competence. I also have some democratic objections, as most people will have, to a bill that is passed by the Scottish Parliament by 95 votes to 32, then being challenged by the only party which voted against it in the Scottish Parliament.
The UK government lost a Brexit case at the Supreme Court. They were forced to hold a vote to trigger Brexit. UK ministers are confident as well, but they're being coy with their language.
There are two different views as to whether this legislation is competent or not, and by referring it to the Supreme Court, what we will achieve is certainty.
For one former UK law officer and architect of devolution, it's a plague on both your houses.
What you're dealing with, whether you like Brexit or not, is that if it happens, individual citizens, companies, businesses have actually got to know how the law stands. And if there's any confusion, then that's not good for business, and that's why we have a Supreme Court. It's part of the architecture of devolution to resolve these matters.
There's still chance of a political agreement rather than legal argument, but that's looking a lot more difficult. There's a famous saying that you catch more bees with honey than vinegar, but the legal challenge has created a much more bitter atmosphere. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
Well, our political correspondent David Porter is at the Supreme Court in Westminster. David, is it likely this will go to a full hearing?
Jackie, in politics as in the law, nothing is 100% certain till all the I's are dotted and the T's crossed. And I think it is fair to say that there are going to have to be a couple of hurdles that are jumped before we know for certain whether people in that building behind me are actually going to have a full hearing into what will happen. Now, we have a situation where at the moment we have another couple of possible impediments. One is the Supreme Court itself. It has to decide whether it wants to actually look at this particular case. All the indications are that they will, because it is very rare what is being proposed, and there is a point of law here they will want to clarify. The second possible impediment to a full hearing is that circumstances may change. At the moment, the Scottish and Welsh governments are embroiled in very lengthy negotiations with the UK government about the implications of Brexit for devolution. They may, and I stress may, actually reach an agreement. If that happens, the continuity bill in Holyrood would be repealed, so there would be nothing for the judges here to adjudicate on. That is the preferred option of many here at Westminster, that it actually never comes to a full hearing. If it does come to a hearing, it is likely to take place sooner rather than later, perhaps within a couple of months, and there will be a huge amount of political and legal interest in what will be an extremely important constitutional ruling.
David Porter, thank you. The Rangers captain Lee Wallace and striker Kenny Miller have been suspended and banned from the club's stadium and training ground. It follows a confrontation with manager Graham Murty after the 4-0 defeat to Celtic at the weekend. Rangers say an investigation is underway, but it's understood both may have played their last game for the club. Here's our senior football reporter, Chris McLaughlin.
Two of Rangers' most experienced players this morning after being summoned, suspended and told to stay away. Their cars parked pitchside in a bid to avoid a growing media pack outside. As they sped off, it was becoming clear their careers at the club could be over. Shortly afterwards, the club released this statement. Rangers can confirm two players, Lee Wallace and Kenny Miller, have this morning been suspended pending investigation into a team-related incident. The angry questioning of the manager's tactics in the dressing room after this game may have sealed their fate. Tom Rogic here getting the first of four for Brendan Rodgers' side, who completely outplayed their rivals. Wild Celtic celebrations, Rangers' furious frustrations. One former captain who knows both players is confused about the fuss.
Two players having something to say, and hopefully there was more than two players having something to say. If two experienced players got up and expressed, and now we don't know what's happened, but if they got up and expressed their opinion of that wasn't good enough today, then I don't see a problem with that.
Player frustration was clear even during Sunday's game. This was Andy Halliday after being taken off. So was today designed to prevent a player revolt?
You know, for there to be an investigation and a suspension for the two players, it's obviously something pretty serious. And it is, the message is pretty loud and clear that no players are bigger than the football club. And certainly in my day, I mean, I was there when Graham Roberts in the dressing room with Graham Souness, and you know, you saw what happened there.
It's the last thing that Rangers needed. There's no doubt it's further turmoil for a club who really have their problems to seek. Out of both cup competitions, club captain suspended, and confusion over who will be the manager next season. Despite the sunshine here in Glasgow at Rangers, when it rains, it pours. Chris McLaughlin, reporting Scotland, Ibrox.
And by the magic of television, Chris is here. Chris, have they both played their last game for Rangers?
I think it's probably safe to say they have. Neither are first-team regulars anyway, or haven't been first-team regulars. Kenny Miller had just a few weeks left in his contract. It's likely that he will be paid up and told to move on. Lee Wallace is slightly different. He's the club captain. He has 14 months left in his contract. But I am told by a club source it's very unlikely that he will play for the club again. The problem the players have is this has now turned into a club versus player issue. Even if they wanted to play for the club again, it looks like there would be a long way back. And of course, we've been here many times, it's one more issue for Rangers that they could do without.
Thank you very much, Chris McLaughlin there. It's just over 16 minutes to 7, a reminder of tonight's main story. A Catholic bishop admits recent sexual abuse scandals have damaged the trust parishioners have in their priests. And still to come. Families of children with ADHD say they're not being offered alternatives to medication. Investment in a scheme aimed at reforming men convicted of domestic abuse is more than doubling in an effort to get more councils to sign up. The Scottish Government has pledged an extra £2.8 million to support the so-called Caledonian system, which can offer an alternative to a prison sentence. Stephen Godden can tell us more.
I can't leave because he's told me what will happen if I do.
Role-playing an abusive relationship. Part of a training session for experienced caseworkers.
It's safer for me just to shut the door. I don't want to be with him when he's like that.
I don't know what she wants from me.
The Caledonian system involves challenging an abuser to change his ways, referred by the courts, like this man, convicted of assaulting his partner.
We were getting drunk and having fights and stuff. It was a bad time. It's hard to explain, but you know, you're just not thinking straight and everything's up in the air. It's just chaos. So it's hard to see what's going on, and even when I first came here, I didn't want to see what was going on.
He's become one of 1,200 men to have passed through the programme since 2011. Currently only available in around a third of council areas, the Scottish Government hope that investing an extra £2.8 million will encourage more to sign up.
It's not just simply about it being an alternative to custody, it's an effective means by changing people's behaviour. And a key part to that is it reduces the risk of them committing these offences again in the future. It's much more effective in dealing with the underlying causes that are driving their offending behaviour, and much more effective in supporting the victims and the children who may be affected by it.
That's what matters to Edinburgh Women's Aid, who welcome the expansion of a programme that makes women and children feel safer.
It's not a soft option because it's a 2-year programme. It's 2 years where a perpetrator convicted of domestic abuse will have to spend that time looking at their own behaviour, looking at the root cause of that behaviour and working towards changing it.
How confident are you that you wouldn't behave like that again in the future?
You can't never say 100%, but I would say yeah, as close as.
You can't do anything, hopeless. The Justice Secretary says levels of domestic abuse in Scotland remain unacceptably high. Repeating positive outcomes on a bigger scale will be the measure of this fresh investment. Stephen Godden, reporting Scotland.
The number of people in work in Scotland fell by 17,000 at the turn of the year. Between December and February, the number of Scots looking for jobs was up by 3,000, taking the unemployment rate to 4.2%. The Office for National Statistics is also reporting that average wages rose over the preceding year by 2.8%, slightly below the level of inflation. The SNP has confirmed a party consultant held talks with Cambridge Analytica, but denied ever working with the controversial company. The analytics company came under fire over the harvesting and use of the personal data of Facebook users, as well as attempting to influence the political process. Appearing before MPs earlier, its former director, Brittany Kaiser, said talks had been held with the SNP in London and Edinburgh. The SNP confirmed an unnamed consultant held one meeting. A spokesperson for the party described Cambridge Analytica as a bunch of cowboys. Work on the rail network is set to cause disruption for travellers over the 2 bank holidays in May. Significant engineering work in the south of Scotland between Glasgow and Edinburgh means East Coast services will start and terminate at Edinburgh. West Coast trains will not run north of Lancaster. Network Rail say the upgrades will relieve overcrowding. Families of children with ADHD say prescribed medication is too often the only option offered to manage the condition. A survey of parents says that families are not routinely being offered alternatives or additional support despite national guidelines. Lisa Summers reports.
He's banging his head. How are you getting on with your homework?
It's a busy afternoon at the Sinclairs. Plenty of the usual demands on the family. But 8-year-old Ryan and 15-year-old Reese also have to live with ADHD.
It's normally when I get emotional or just emotions, because that's sort of like moves it about. I can either snap or just be calm. I'm going to try and add in sort of like a...
Since his diagnosis, he's been on medication. It's helped him cope at school. He says too often kids with ADHD are labelled naughty or disruptive.
Most times when it gets to that point, we can't really control it as well. What really helped most was having close friends and staff that are actually helpful and don't just sort of like shout at you and command you what to do.
Reese also had other help for his ADHD, and his mum Avril was given training. It's a different case with her younger son. She turned down medication and is yet to be offered other support. She runs a parents group for families with ADHD.
My experience is long waiting lists. That's one, and that's all around the areas, not just our area. Again, I think the service is overstretched. I do believe that there should be other interventions offered, different services, and not just medication.
Findings from today's report suggest that across Scotland, medication is the only option parents are routinely offered.
One thing that parents really need is when their child is diagnosed to have training about ADHD. The respondents to our survey, only a third of them had been offered any kind of training. Sadly, it reflected what we're hearing all the time, which is that parents are just desperate for more input, but CAMHS teams are just very overstretched and they can't always deliver it.
Back at home, Reese says working at his computer is a strategy that helps him cope with his ADHD.
If there's someone that you know or close to you that has ADHD and you think it's they're being like really naughty or uncontrollable, try and spend a few time to like get to know them better, talk to them, ask what they like and maybe start talking about it, start a nice conversation. So never really just judge by the cover.
Lisa Summers reporting Scotland.
Many of Team Scotland's athletes have been making their way home from the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games after huge success in Australia. With 44 medals, this was the team's second best ever result. The best was in Glasgow 4 years ago. Katrina Renton went to meet some of the athletes as they arrived. Her report contains some flash photography.
Home to a hero's welcome, and what a result. Duncan Scott won 6 medals for Team Scotland, more in a single games than any other Scottish swimmer in history.
I think he's got it! Yes, he has got it!
A gold, a silver and 4 bronze.
It's obviously great. I mean, I've not really had much time to reflect upon it. But yeah, no, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and you know, the group that we had out there with Team Scotland was amazing. You know, to be a part of the best overseas performance ever as well is amazing.
But he finishes with a difficult tumble.
In gymnastics, Daniel Purvis got a bronze on the floor and also was part of the team.
The best moment for me was coming away with the team bronze. We all worked so hard for that. It was a big battle. I was so proud of that, and for the lads to all come away with a medal is a great feeling.
In lawn bowling, it was golds in the triples and in the 4s for the men.
Certainly never expected 2 goals for my first Commonwealth Games. It's been an absolutely fantastic experience.
Obviously I got the gold medal in Glasgow in the singles, so to follow up with this triple this time round and get another gold was absolutely superb.
And the women got silver in the triples.
It's been absolutely fantastic. The bowling in general has just been great for Scotland over the last few weeks in Australia, and we're absolutely delighted to come away with the silver in the triples.
Why are you so good at it? Plenty of hard work and practice. And we get on so well as well, which I think that helps. We've got a great bond within the team, so I think that's a big help as well.
Back in the pool, it was silver for Hannah Miley.
It wasn't quite what I think everyone was expecting it to be, but I still made a bit of history in that I came away being the most decorated 400 medalist swimmer at the Commonwealth Games.
In sport, you don't always get what you deserve, but out there over the last couple of weeks, we saw that when the Scots get their mind to it, get the training right, and they can deliver.
And they certainly did.
Look at that, is that heavy?
It is, yeah. We can put it on, shall we?
Can you give me a shot?
Right, go for it, yeah.
Oh my goodness. For the only time you'll ever see me wearing a medal, Team Scotland won 44 medals in the Gold Coast, way exceeding the pre-Games target. And of course, it's the second highest medal tally in the history of Team Scotland.
Sadly, I had to give them back. I didn't earn them, but Team Scotland certainly did. Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Although Katrina's handbag was slightly heavier when she returned. Anyway, let's get the weather forecast. Christopher.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there, good evening to you. Well, it was an improving picture for most of us today, with many having some sunshine in the end. But there was some rain around. You can see on the radar the earlier rain clearing eastwards, and now a few showers just pushing in from the west coast, and over the next few hours just drifting a little further east, perhaps over towards Angus and then north before clearing, to leave a largely dry night, a mixture of clouds, some clear spells, relatively mild, 8 to 10 Celsius, still breezy though from the south. Now tomorrow we start to see the arrival of that warmer air we've been talking about, the tropical continental air pushing up from the south, and that will have an impact on temperatures. The left-hand column here, what we're likely to see mid-April, but the right-hand column, what we could well see tomorrow. Despite the warmer weather though, there will be some cloud around, certainly through the morning for central and western areas, and a weak weather front moving its way northwards, just bringing a few spots of rain for western Scotland up towards the Highlands. But by the afternoon, it clears, and for the central belt and the south, plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasantly warm, 18 degrees quite easily for Glasgow and Edinburgh, and around the coast, just something a touch cooler with that breeze holding on. For Highland and Grampian, the clouds still in play at this point, but thinning and breaking. And around the Murray coast, we could well see 20 Celsius. Towards the Western Isles, a little bit of rain here, a bit more cloud, and certainly a cloudier afternoon for parts of Caithness, Orkney and Shetland after what will be a very sunny morning. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, the cloud leaves the mainland. A dry night, a clear night, a cooler night. Some rain for the Western Isles. Thursday, another dry day, a cloudy morning, but the sunshine will come through by afternoon, perhaps 1 or 2 light showers in the Highlands. And once again, in the sunshine, the temperatures on the rise, 17 to 19 Celsius quite easily for the central lowlands, cooler towards the west coast, some low cloud around the southwest coast. Friday, a subtle change in wind direction. It's a westerly, so temperatures down a notch, but high pressure nearby. That's good news for the weekend. Here's Friday in detail. Largely dry, bit of cloud around, some sunshine, lighter winds, temperatures down a notch, but in the sun still feeling really quite pleasant. And then to the weekend, with that high pressure nearby, well, a good couple of days weather-wise, mostly dry, some sunshine and light winds, and in the sun feeling really quite pleasant, feeling a lot like spring. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. The Prime Minister has apologised to Caribbean leaders over the Windrush generation controversy. She said she was genuinely sorry about the anxiety caused by the Home Office threatening some Commonwealth citizens with deportation. A senior figure in the Catholic Church has admitted recent sexual abuse scandals involving clergy have damaged the trust parishioners have in their priests. The Bishop of Galloway's comments follow the jailing last week of a former priest. And that's Reporting Scotland. We're back at 10:30, but from all the team for now, good evening.